that I had the most requests on was actually the book I self-published. I think I ended up with like 75 full requests and
Oh
zero
my
offers.
gosh.
Yes.
That's insane.
This was also
75?
2015. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to So I Wrote a Book, Now What? Where writers chat about writing. My guest today is Jenny Adams. She's the amazing author of A Deadly Endeavor, and her new book, A Poisonous Silence, comes out May 6th. I am so excited for you to hear this interview. She is so inspiring. I took away a lot of information about self-publishing, traditional publishing, and writing, and the whole journey. So let's get into it. Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining me.
I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, what made you decide to write a book?
I've actually always written from like as long as I can remember. As a little kid, just filled up notebooks and notebooks and notebooks. It wasn't until I graduated college that I thought, oh, maybe this is something I should try. And then it took me 7 manuscripts and about 14 years to hold my finished book in my hand. So it's a long road. But I can't remember a time when I did not write. The Deadly Endeavor was my
Oh,
debut. And it's funny because it was actually also the first adult manuscript that I wrote. The six before that were all young adult fantasy. So it was a completely new age category, a completely new genre for me. And it was the
oh,
one that sold.
I've been reading it. It's delightful.
Oh,
It's
thank
very
you. I'm so
saucy for
glad.
a historical mystery.
And it was saucier, but we had to cut a lot because I was told historical mystery readers are not like historical romance readers.
Interesting. Because I've been delighted by it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should read more historical mysteries. But now that you say that, maybe I shouldn't.
No, and there are some, and I'm happy to give recommendations of others that are like just as swoony and amazing. But it's a small number, and I think the Venn diagram of readers between historical mystery and historical romance could have a lot more overlap, and I think we just need to push it a little bit.
So, was A Deadly Endeavor then, was that your seventh manuscript, like full book?
Yes, seventh full book.
What happened
Um,
to the other six full books?
so one of them I self-published in 2015, and then I never wrote the sequel. I like burned out. And it ended on a cliffhanger, and I feel really bad about it. So I ended up taking it down. Um, and the rest just kind of languished. And this manuscript number six was what I got my agent with. And that book was on sub for almost 3 years before we ran out of options.
Mm-hmm.
Very
What was that
sadly.
book
But
about?
that
Was it
book
another historical
was
mystery?
it was no, it was young adult historical fantasy slash romantasy. It's called Blood Like Roses. And it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling set in 16th century Germany with werewolves and flower magic, and like coming of age and choosing things for ourselves for the first time. I wrote it specifically for my like eighth grade students. I was an eighth grade advisor when I wrote it. I'm a school librarian. And I thought we have a lot of like upper YA, but not a lot of YA with younger, like 15, 16-year-old protagonists. And I think ultimately that was what killed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you queried your agent with that book. What was it
Mhm.
like querying after self-publishing? Because there's this kind of
Yeah.
thing that I don't know if it's a rumor. I don't know how true it is. Obviously, it's not completely true because you have an agent and you self-published a book,
Mhm.
but they tell you, oh, don't self-publish because then you'll never get an agent. And it's like it's one path or the other.
I think that like for a certain title, right? Like, so I think
Mm-hmm.
the advice that I've always taken to heart, or I took to heart when I was querying, was I couldn't query that book that I self-published, but I could query a future book. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that I think, and that was really true. And agents were really positive with it. So many had remembered, and there was like 4 years between when I self-published. And when I queried um, my sixth books, I didn't write for a long time in between books five and book six. And I was actually stunned how many agents remembered A Magic Dark and Bright because I had queried them with it before I decided to self-publish and who were so excited to see Blood Like Roses. My agent, Amy Jafrida from Del Castro, she actually had a copy of A Magic Dark and Bright, like a paperback, on our call and was
Oh
so
my
excited
gosh.
because she had loved it so
That's so
much.
amazing.
Yeah, and I had she had been a book blogger before she was an agent, and she had promoted the book. She'd loved the book since it had come out in 2015. So it was just, it felt really like she was really enthusiastic about all
Yeah,
of my writing and not just this one manuscript.
that's amazing. So when you queried the book that you signed your agent with, did you
Mhm.
query pretty widely? What was that process like for you?
It was totally different from querying the other books. The book that I had the most requests on was actually the book I self-published. I think I ended up with like 75 full requests and
Oh
zero
my
offers.
gosh.
Yes.
That's insane.
This was also
75?
2015. Yeah. And it was, I was in this like, I was in this contest that was like a precursor to Pitch Wars called Pitch Slam. And I got a lot of attention from that. And so many people, they said such kind things about it, but it was, all came down to the market is crowded, why paranormal romance is dead. You
They
know,
were
we
wrong.
don't, they were wrong. They were wrong. And this was 2015, 2014, 2015. So it's a totally different time. But when I went into querying Blood Like Roses, I had a list of agents who had liked my previous work and had said really wonderful things. I started there. I think I queried 40 agents with Blood Like Roses. I ended up with about a same similar like 70% request rate. And then one offer, which is better. You know, I improved that you only need one yes. Um,
Mhm.
because that happened both with querying and then again when I was on sub. You just need that right person to see you and believe in your work. And it does
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
And it seems like it's really an amazing fit. Like she knew about your other book, she had your other book. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And it was actually really funny because we had known each other, we had been friendly. And I actually asked her about querying another agent at her agency because we had known each other and I didn't want to be weird. And she kept liking
Hmm.
all of my tweets about Blood Like Roses. And I thought she was just being nice. So I was like, oh, we're friends. I don't like I know she had read my other work, but like I didn't want to be weird. And
Right.
then and this other thing, her manuscript wish list said very clearly no werewolves. So I was like respecting that. And
Hmm.
one day she messaged me and she's like, Jenny, I don't want to be weird, but why have you not sent me your books? And I was like, well, I didn't want to be weird. And then, I had an offer a week later.
It is kind of strange though when you start to get like online friendly with agents and then you're like,
Mhm.
are we friends? Should I not?
Right.
Should I stop trying to query you? Is this going to be a conflict?
Well, that's what I didn't want to
Right.
jeopardize the relationship that we had by making it weird. And she didn't want to make it weird either, but I'm really glad that
Right.
she asked because we work so well together. It's been almost just about 4 years that we've been working together and three books. She has been such a champion for everything. And she was the one who, when I wasn't selling Blood Like Roses, was like, okay, let's try something new. And I was like, great. And I said, I have this kind of weird idea. I'm not sure what it is. I wrote the first few chapters of what became a Deadly Endeavor, which at that point was still YA and still, I don't know, had ghosts and magic. And I sent it to her and I was like, I have no idea what this is. And she's like, me neither, but it's not YA and I'm not mad about it. So write it as adult and let it happen. And then, and then it happens.
That's
Yeah.
so great. So when you sit down to write, do you have like a ritual? Do you have a spot? Do you have a candle? Do you have a beverage? Or do you just
I do
write when
have
you
a,
can?
I do have a candle. I have a candle. This is my new candle.
Oh, what's it smell like?
Um, it's kind of grapefruity. Edie, my main character in A Deadly Endeavor or in my Deadly 20s mystery series. She For some reason, grapefruit has always been the scent I've gravitated to when writing her. So this is kind of like a grapefruity kind of candle. And I do have an office now. I didn't always. I wrote 6 manuscripts sitting on my sofa, or at the playground with my little one. She's 6 now, but she was really little when I was writing my other books, or not even here yet when I was writing my other books. I've written on the bus, like commuting to and from work. Um, Basically anywhere I can call out time to do it. But I do really love writing first thing in the morning when I'm actively drafting. My alarm goes off about 4:30, 4:45. I, do a quick walk with the dog and then sit down, and it's my time. No one needs me at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep, that's my process too. It's like a race to see how much I can do before people wake up.
Yeah. Before everyone wakes up, and I'm a teacher, so I like have to leave the house at 6:45 to get to school. So, yeah, it's like very much like roll out of bed, get some words in, and then when everyone else starts waking up, it's like that's when I go pack lunches and get everybody out the house.
Mm.
I'm glad I'm not alone, for
So
sure.
once you have your manuscript, once you're not drafting, what's your process like then? Do you have beta readers or do you send it right to your agent?
It depends on the book. Normally, I would say I send my agent something that is what I call like query ready. I have a critique partner who has been with me for forever. Kiri McCauley, she's a award-winning YA author. We met in high school. We've been friends since we've been 16 years old, and I sometimes even send her like chapter by chapter emails as I'm writing. She's like, here you go in your inbox. And she's always been really excited. And she's so smart and so thoughtful with all of her feedback. And I have a few other critique partners. Right now, they're either my agent siblings, who are amazing, or a few people that I'm in this like Discord with that we met all applying to Pitch Wars in 2020, and none of us got in. And we have kind of stayed together ever since. I usually trust them. And then it goes to Amy, my most recent book, A Poisonous Silence, which comes out in May. It's the sequel to A Deadly Endeavor. I was on such a tight timeline that I didn't even send it to my agent before I sent it to my editor. Like it, and I had to like break myself of like, I can't let anyone see this mess. Um, because I just had no
Hmm.
time. Like it was, I think I sold the book just about a year ago, the end of November, and I had nothing. I didn't even have a plot, and it was due April 1st. So, and book one came out March 5th. So there was a lot happening.
Oh, goodness.
And yeah, it was intense. But I survived it and I did it. And I learned that when they've already bought the book, it's okay to send a hot mess because we can fix it together. So we can't fix it.
That's a good lesson
Yeah.
to learn.
It has to exist before you can fix it. Like,
Oh, it's so true. Sometimes that's
yeah,
hard to do though, to like let yourself let it be a mess and just exist.
it is so hard. I'm struggling with that right now, actually, because I'm working on something that's not under contract, that's totally different. And I don't have that external pressure. So I'm just like fiddling like sentence by sentence. And I also know I will never finish a book doing this. So I need to like buckle down and actually get it done. But it's still a struggle 8 books in to just do that.
How do you know when your story is done?
I don't know. Usually I'm really tired of looking at it. I've reached the end.
Mm.
My readers have like given me some feedback. They've said like thumbs up, ready, or hey Jenny, this isn't quite ready. Like when I sent my first draft of A Poisonous Silence to my editor, Melissa, I was like, oh, was 48,000 words. And it had a beginning and a middle and an end. And so I was like, good enough, like sent it off. And she's like, I love the characters, like you've nailed where they should be, but the plot makes no sense. And I was like, yeah, I know. So then it was at this point, it's like waiting for her to tell me, like, oh, okay, like we are where I want you to be. Working with an editor working on a book that's not under contract, I really rely on those critique partners to let me know if it's good. Sometimes I think I live in
Hmm.
delusion. Like I'm like, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's done.
Well, part of being a writer, I feel like, is living in delusion. Like you're basically just hallucinating and putting it on the paper. So sometimes it's hard to get that
Yes.
distance of like, is this actually something?
Right. And you just have to try to like, I mean, I definitely sent out queries for earlier books before I think I was ready, but I got really kind feedback from agents telling me that, like I got like personalized feedback or R&Rs saying it's not where it needs to be, but here you go. And I think those R&Rs I got, even though none of them actually, well, one of them actually led to something. The rest didn't, but my book was always made stronger for it. And I was always made a better writer for it. The revise and resubmit that did work, which was I think my fourth or fifth one, was what led to the sale of The Deadly Endeavor. So that sold on a revise and resubmit.
Oh, like from the editors?
Yes. Because when it went on sub, it
I did not
I
realize.
remember
I didn't realize
yeah,
that
so that
happened on sub.
it did. Blood Like Roses had two of them that I totally rewrote my book twice, and neither of them those versions sold. Um, And it really sucks to rewrite your book specifically for somebody and then have them be like, oh, actually, sorry, not what I'm looking for, or, can't figure out how to fix this.
Yeah, but
But
it's
with
exactly what you told me
Deadly
you were looking for.
exactly, exactly. It's like I did everything you wanted and still it wasn't, I mean, that's really hard. And so when the revise and resubmit came in for A Deadly Endeavor, which when it went on sub, was a paranormal historical mystery with like lots of spice. There were ghosts, there were necromancy, and the rejections we were getting were this is delightful, and I have no idea how to market it, or I have no idea where it's going to sit on a shelf. And Melissa, who is now my editor at Crooked Lane, Melissa Rector, she's brilliant. She wrote back and she said, I love this. Can I get on a call and talk to Jenny? There are some things that I'd like to discuss with her. And when we were on that call, she said, so I don't think we can market it the way that it is. Like what you've written isn't really a genre. How about a historical mystery? What if we took out all of the ghosts, all of the magic? And at first I was like, no, I wasn't going to do it. And my boss, um, my co-librarian, she was like, what is the worst that's going to happen? She's like, so you do it. And she says, no, like, you're used to that. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I am used, like, at that point, I was so used to rejection. I think over like 10 years of querying and 14 years of writing and seven books, like my rejection folder was huge, like 500, like I was so used to no. I never let myself
Mhm.
think about like what a yes could mean. Um, so I said, you know what? I'm going to read it again. I'll see if I can figure this out. And I highlighted the parts in the book where magic came up. And there were like seven spots in the whole book. And I was like, oh, wait, I think I see what she's talking about. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And I rewrote the book in 3 weeks to be a historical mystery, which I had to do a lot more work. It made me a better writer because so many things that I was using magic to explain or explore, I suddenly had to have the characters do that work themselves. And I think we sent it back, and within 10 days, we had an offer. So that was the one that worked. um, yeah,
That's
that's
amazing.
how a Deadly Endeavor happened. Yeah, and I call myself an accidental mystery writer. I always loved mysteries. Reading them and watching them, like all of those like PBS, BBC mysteries, like love them.
Hmm.
Um, but I never thought I'd be here with a mystery series. Sometimes I'm still like, how am I? The imposter syndrome, I think, is really real, but I'm
Right.
happy. I'm so proud of the books, and
Yeah, it's so good. I'm
yeah,
loving it. I have
oh,
no
thank you.
idea who did it yet. So that's good because usually I can
Yay.
figure it out pretty quick. I have guesses, but we'll see if any of them are right. Um, I'm convinced any book is a mystery anyway, just because of the way you have
Yeah,
to like reveal and like conceal and disseminate information to the
I
reader.
yeah, I totally agree. I also think um, one of the things that really helps me writing, people are always like, well, how did you write a historical book? Like never always writing fantasy before. And I was like, well, they're not that different. Like I think those 6 fantasy manuscripts I wrote really let me world build in a way that
Hmm.
that paid off. Like, like it suddenly I was working with a world that really did exist, but I still hadn't lived in. And so all those skills from writing fantasy were really applicable to writing historical. Yeah, I think every book now, even if it doesn't find a home or if it lives in your hard drive forever with no readers, isn't wasted because you can take everything you've learned from one book and carry it on.
I hope so.
Yeah,
As someone with like, I don't know, 7 in the drawer.
I
um,
I feel you.
what are you working on now? You said that you were working on something kind of new and different.
Yeah, well, so I'm torn. And so I have like 20,000 words of 2 very different projects, and I can't quite figure out which one to move forward on. So I'm kind of like picking away at both of them, which means I'm really moving
Mhm.
nowhere. Um, so I finished A Poisonous Silence, which is the second book in my Deadly Twenties mystery. I outlined the third book, which I don't know if I'm getting a third book. I am hopeful. But I decided if I am getting a third book, I'm going to go in with a plan, which did not happen with book 2, which was a total surprise. So I should at least know what I'm doing. um, Hopefully, I'm making that easier for
Do
my
you
future self.
normally outline your projects?
Yeah. So I have to have like a full synopsis. People hate synopses. I love them, and I cannot start writing until I have one. And then that grows from like 1 page to like 10 pages to like 20, 50, and then I start writing like a zero draft, which my first drafts are super bare bones and not very pretty. It's just me getting it out. So I'm working on both 2 adult projects. One is epic romantasy, kind of in a early 1900s, 1890s inspired world, with like dead gods and a treasure hunt and uh, some of my favorite romantic tropes like fake marriage and on the run together.
Oh,
That's
fun.
been really fun to work on, but it also deals with like corrupt governments and crumbling empire and persecuted minorities, and it's a little heavy at the moment, the climate that we are living in. Um, the
Mhm.
other project that I'm working on is what I like to call my like practical magic meets Taylor Swift book. It's a paranormal, witchy rom-com about a woman who is the youngest in her generation, um, and her family of witches. None of the women in her family can cry. Um, and when her grandmother dies, she inherits her grandmother's bookstore, which is also haunted by the ghost of her grandmother, who is dead set on hooking her up with the boy who broke her heart in high school. So it's like a little like Hallmarky small town, but
Oh,
also a little witchy and like generational trauma. That I think is where I'm leaning towards right now, just because it's so fun. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. I have to make my mind. It's really hard to do.
so right now, do you work on one day and one another, or whichever one is speaking to you at the moment?
Yeah, it's really whichever is speaking to me at the moment. The last couple of weeks, I haven't really written much at all. I'll get like a few hundred words here, a few hundred words there. Um, I'm struggling with just making forward progress at the moment, which I think other people can probably relate to, and it might be nice for them to hear that it happens. It still happens. No matter what stage you're at,
Mhm.
it happens. But I finished a book before and I can do it again. I just have to do it. So,
Have you ever felt stuck before or like not making forward progress? And if so, like what did you do to kind of get
mhm.
yourself back in that groove?
Um, I definitely have. I took, like I said, like the book I self-published, I wrote half of the sequel and then never finished it. I have a whole hard drive of abandoned projects. I think it's a normal thing too. Like you start writing, you start feeling out the world and like you realize like, oh, maybe this isn't working. I have stolen bits and pieces of them for other projects that have worked. And I think, I mean, every single book I've ever written at like the 20 to 30,000 word mark, I hate it. I hate it a whole lot. And I tell my husband I am never writing another book, that I am bad at this. I am done. I'm just gonna throw my laptop into the sea and do something else with my life. And then he goes, "Are you at 20,000 words?" And I say, "Yeah." He's like, "We've been here before, Jen. We know what to do." And so I think I just have to push through. It's really just building that habit back up of like sitting down and getting those words in every day. And you definitely need rest too. So like if there are times where day after day I'm waking up and it's not working, I give myself permission to like, you know what, for the next week, I'm just gonna read books that make me happy and take a break and sleep in and rest because something's not working the way it should. And maybe with some distance, I'll be able to figure that out and then move forward. Unless I'm under deadline and I have to, get my editor an entire book in 5 months, then I just gotta push through. And that was very motivating. That deadline, it was like, well, you already paid me for this book, so I better get it done. Nothing was motivating like that.
What are some of the books that you turn to when you're looking for like inspiration or um just to immerse yourself in another world?
Some of my favorite authors are like Laini Taylor. Her Daughter of Smoke and Bone series made me a writer, right? Those were the books that I read right out of college, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. They're so like breathtakingly beautiful and complex and romantic and just amazing. Claire Legrand is another author who I respect immensely. She writes everything really. She's written mostly fantasy horror from middle grade through adults, and I have loved all of her books. She's an author that I can just sink back into time and time again. Um, I love in the mystery space, what I've been turning to recently have been Deanna Raybourn's Veronica Speedwell series is just so smart and so swimmy. And it's like everything I want a Deadly Endeavor to be. I want these Deadly 20s mysteries to like have this sort of life that Veronica Speedwell has had. I also love Nikessa Fia's Harlem Renaissance series. It's so good. And I mean, there's just so I can just keep going. I have a whole pile of romance novels when I'm like really just feeling like I need to just look at character, right? Like my characters are stuck, my characters aren't working, and nobody writes characters, I think, like romance authors. They are
Hmm.
always so well formed and fleshed out and thought out, and there's like internal conflicts are just like masterful, right? Like Jessica Joyce or my agent siblings, Sarah T. Dub. She wrote Birding with Benefits, and it's like Sarah's books are so good. Or like Courtney Milan, right? Her historical romances are so good. But yeah, I just lots of different things.
Do you have any craft books that you really like that you learned a lot from?
Gail Carriger's The Heroine's Journey is so good. It is, I mean, I loved her Soulless series. I've loved a lot of her books. And it's really taking that hero's journey and putting it through a feminine lens that has helped the way that I write. I really also love Still Writing by Dani Shapiro, which is more of like a writing life kind of book, more so than like straight up craft, but it's beautiful. I love Big Magic. And of course, Bird by Bird is always what I come back to, and the Mott's Bird by Bird. I read it, for the first time in grad school. I was briefly in a writing program before I realized a program focusing on literary fiction was not the best fit for me or what I write, but I came away with Bird by Bird. And that really, I mean, that's what I go back to too. It's like you can only write what you, like one word at a time, one bird at a time. Like that was what I needed to hear. Those are some of my absolute favorites.
I also love that one. So you self-published a book and then took a little break from writing, and then you decided to query your next finished project. Is
Mhm.
that right? What
Yes,
made you decide to go from self-publishing to traditional publishing?
there were multiple reasons, but I think the most important reason is I burned myself out being that person who had to make every single decision, right? Like I had, and that's what when you are self-publishing, it is so hard and it is so much work. And it is, I mean, it is such, I'm so impressed with everyone who does it successfully and over multiple books. So it takes like this entrepreneurial spirit that I do not have the brain capacity to do, I think. I did it. I was good at it. I mean, I sold like 5,000 copies of A Magic Dark and Bright. My goal was to produce a book that looked indistinguishable from a traditionally published young adult novel. You know, it had great reviews. People loved it. I'm really proud of it. I could not make all of those decisions and keep writing, right? Like I needed somebody else to take the business side of things off of my plate in order for me to have the energy to make my art. I think that's a fair thing, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's also something that people who are considering self-publishing really need to think long and hard about. The traditional path is not easy, but self-publishing is absolutely not the easy way out. It is so much
Mm-hmm.
work and it is so lonely and it is um, expensive. And yeah, and if you are looking like you want to just write books, and you still have to market yourself and do things in the traditional side, but ultimately the publisher is the one assuming that risk. They're assuming the monetary risk. They are the one making decisions about the cover and the copy edits, and you have somebody else telling you when your deadlines are. For someone like me who struggles with executive function, I need that. I need it. So that's why I switched paths. Not to say that I won't in the future think about it again. I always, when I was talking with my agent on, the call, then when she offered to represent me, I told her very frankly, I think it's a book by book decision. I think my calculus for maybe an adult romance novel might be different from a young adult fantasy novel. And it also depends how much room in my brain I have in a moment to pursue one path or the other. And she's totally supportive with whatever I want to do.
That's so great.
Yeah.
It's a um yeah, they're just both such different but equally challenging roads.
Yes. I mean, I think the difference is the traditional path, you need that external buy-in right off the bat that you don't need. But in self-publishing, you do need those resources to pay for your cover and your developmental editor and your copy editor and your actual physical copies of your book, your layout, like all of these things. You need that startup capital. Yeah, they're both hard, and I am so proud of every one of my friends who has chosen either way because they're doing the thing. They're getting their books to readers' hands, no matter which route they choose to do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
both journeys with us. I think it's so interesting to hear, and you don't always hear someone that's made the transition and like what both sides are like.
And I know other people make the decision for different reasons. I know I have friends who keep self-publishing their books, but maybe pursue traditional deals for audio or foreign rights. Those are also, you can do a hybrid. And it also, you can, like I said, make that decision book by book. What's right for one book and what's marketable in traditional versus indie publishing, like those are different things. And so you just have to know the market, know what's selling, and know yourself before you make that decision.
Great advice. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I think just especially for people who are in the query trenches or in the sub trenches, just don't self reject I think is the big one. Like you have to believe in you, and it really does just take one person to be looking for your book at that specific time. So much comes down to luck and to timing. And I've seen so many talented writers give up so early because they couldn't handle the rejection. And it is hard to separate yourself from your work, but it's also a crucial learning experience. When you're experiencing it on, when you're querying, you're building that resilience and that grit for when sub comes along, because then the stakes feel even higher. And then once you have a book published, you need that same distance from the work and that same ability to separate yourself from your book once those reviews start coming in, because um, that's a whole nother level of uh, emotional assault, I think.
Do you read your reviews?
So I have Goodreads blocked on my computer because I I did. I like fell. I think everyone does in the beginning, right? Like everyone falls
How
prey. And
can you
then
not?
how can you not? And the first ones are always so nice. Like my Kirkus review came in and I was like, it was nice. And I was like, oh man. But I couldn't tell you what it actually says. I can tell you about my publisher's weekly review, which called me spirited and haphazard. Um, and an uneasy blend of froth and gore. Like those are the words that live in my brain. I'm also fueled by spite. So then I was drafting book two when I got that in, and I was like, oh, you've seen nothing yet, Publishers Weekly, because this is going to get even frothier. But
I
I
can't wait.
couldn't, right? Yeah, and it's not as gory. The book two is not, it's poison, so it's not as like gory. But I have that in my brain, like that, those are the words that stick. And so after that, after the Publishers Weekly review, and after I found myself feeling really badly about some of the Goodreads reviews, which, and you know, I think most of them up to that point had been positive, but there were like one or two that like didn't finish or whatever, and I was dwelling on them so much that I was like, I cannot commit the emotion. Like those aren't even for me at this point, right? Because I can't do anything to fix it. I'm not even looking for feedback from these people because I don't even know who they are. And frankly, like my readers have found me, and if this is not the book for you, that's okay. But I still like blocked Goodreads from my computer. So now if I type it in, it redirects me to like calm.org's like meditation page. It's like breathe.
That's so
So
smart.
yeah, and then eventually I just stopped checking. Like you like break that muscle, and now I don't even feel the need to look, which is good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your
Oh,
story. I can't wait for your next book.
thank you. Yeah, Poisonous Silence comes out May 6th. And can I just describe A Deadly Endeavor a little bit? Is that
Oh,
okay?
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, do.
Oh, yeah. So, A Deadly Endeavor was published in March 2024 by Crooked Lane Books. It is set in 1920s Philadelphia, and I like to describe it as if you took Alexis Rose from Schitt's Creek and Roy Kent from Ted Lasso, and you dropped them into 1920s Philly to catch a serial killer while really wanting to kiss each other. Um, and I've been told it's delightful and both
It
frothy
is.
and gory. So,
It is. In the best possible way.
yeah. So that's A Deadly Endeavor. And then if you like it, I hope you take a chance on book two. So I get to keep writing them. I hope I get to keep writing Edie and
Me
Gil for a
too.
long, long
I love Edie.
time. She's she appeared in my brain like a freight train. Yeah,
Oh,
she's
really? Did
yeah,
she just showed up one day?
yeah. And any plan I had for her, she just was like, nope, here I am. I'm in the park taking off my clothes. Like
That's one of my
she's
favorite
just
scenes.
oh, my copy editor hated that scene. He told me it was incredibly unrealistic and would make her like little better than a sex worker. And I was like, there is like photographic evidence of women artists doing this in the 1920s. So um, it's a whole nother conversation.
Let me come with my files.
Yes, I'm a librarian. I have my research.
I loved that scene. I really did.
Oh,
And I can't wait
yay.
for the next book.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. It was so lovely to talk about my journey,
Yes.
and just hopefully give a little bit of hope to people who, you know, might not be the first book or the second book or the fifth book or the sixth book. The only way it's never going to happen is if you quit. So,
So true. So inspiring. Thank you all so much for being here. Now go write.